Welcome back. For well more than 3 years, New Jersey has been actively seeking to legalize sports betting in the state. And the idea was approved by voters in a non-binding ballot measure in 2011, but it hasn't been able to take effect because federal law bans sports betting except in 4 states. Governor Chris Christie attempted to push through sports betting despite that federal law, but his efforts have thus far been rebuffed by the courts. Though advocates have been seeking an end around to that ruling, much of it focused on whether the state regulates sports betting or just allows it. Tonight we're joined by the man I think we can safely say is the state's #1 advocate for sports betting, Democratic New Jersey State Senator Ray Lesniak. We're also joined by Kostya Kennedy. Kostya is a contributing editor to Sports Illustrated, a visiting professor at NYU's Tisch Institute of Sports Management, where he's leading a research group aimed at sizing up the illegal sports betting market in the United States. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Senator, basic question. Why should New Jersey legalize sports betting?
Well, first of all, we have 2 dying industries, Atlantic City and our horse racing industries. We're talking over 10,000 jobs have been lost just recently. Sports betting will give a boost to both of those industries. Final Four weekend, Super Bowl, any big sporting event, you cannot get a room in Las Vegas. Atlantic City is a ghost town. We need the attraction of sports betting to boost those economies and bring those jobs back.
I've also heard you make the argument that, well, it's a billion-dollar business and people are doing it anyway.
Well, for sure. Look at the NFL. They're playing 4 games a year in Wembley Stadium where people are betting right in the stadium. So why not give New Jersey that same right?
And so, and just to continue the thought, if people are already doing it and it doesn't really hurt that many people, or at least that's one of the arguments, why not allow, let's say, recreational use of marijuana on the same lines? People are already doing it. It's a billion-dollar business. Do you support that?
Well, first of all, I'm very much involved in the recovery community. Indeed, there's a recovery school named after me. The recovery community is not there yet. They still believe that that's not, that legalizing marijuana would be helpful to those folks. Sports betting, on the other hand, of course, you always have people who are addicted. And by the way, my legislation provides resources for programs for people who would be addicted to sports, but they shouldn't get in the way of everyone else, and plus of those jobs that we'll bring back.
Just wanted to ask about the personal freedom argument. Kostya, the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, has come out and said that sports betting should be legal. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. Major League Baseball's new commissioner, Rob Manfred, says he thinks the league might be able to support it and wants to consider it. Are they wrong?
Well, they're talking about supporting federal legislation. And I understand why Adam Silver is an advocate of the NBA, why Rob Manfred an advocate for Major League Baseball, why Senator Lesniak is an advocate for New Jersey, would want to have a legal system and be able to gain revenues from it. It's a selfish act. In a good sense, in a way, you're acting out for your own interest and the interest of your constituents in order to make money. But I don't think that it's the right thing in general to have sports be legal. I think the effects on sports themselves could be very profound.
Well, what about that? Because there are questions that it could compromise the integrity of the game, and there's a long history of cheating and gambling scandals in pro sports. Pete Rose, the Black Sox, the CCNY basketball.
Exactly. The best way to catch illegal activity in sports is to have it regulated so that you can detect unusual betting patterns. Betting patterns move quickly. Now you take a look at that. Now, with it being all on the ground, it's difficult to detect.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, that particularly online betting is a good thing. I think that your measure calls for betting only if you're there in present, which makes it much harder to detect because people can come up and bet with cash you don't know, whereas online they have to ID. I'm not talking about that in terms of the integrity. I mean that we look at what's happening to racetracks and how they're not attended, and what's happened to horse racing, even what's happened to boxing, which is had its hand in gambling. I've been around sports for a long time. I'm not an idealist, but I do think that there's something about sports which represents something real and pure, and the activity of athletic endeavor has value. And if you're going to have sports being viewed as something that did so-and-so get 3 hits last night because I bet on him? Did they win by 4 and not who won the game?
So your concern is more for the pure integrity of the sport in terms of...
For the way we view and handle sports, right? You're going to have people cheering when the Nets go from 5 down, or leading by 5, the Nets home crowd, now the other team gets 2 points and it's 3, and they're happy because the team covered.
Which happens right now. As a matter of fact, any sports show, they talk more about who's covering the line, what the spread is over and under, more than who's going to win the game. That happens right now.
I don't think that that's true. I think that
Really?
it is part of the discussion, and I think in football a betting line has been part of all of us grew up with the betting line, and I think it's viewed as a way to measure the size of the favorite, right? If somebody's a 3-point favorite, it means one thing. If they're a 10-point favorite, it means something else. You don't hear people. I mean, I watch more sports than I should be watching. People, it gets mentioned, but it's not a topic of conversation.
But isn't
really.
that already a concern given the prevalence of fantasy sports and people rooting for? I mean, when I had a fantasy baseball, I'm a Mets fan, and I found myself rooting for.
Oh, so
for
am I.
Maddox
I
and
feel
Smoltz.
sorry for you.
Yeah,
Let's do it, all 3 of us. Here we go.
But I
crazy.
found myself rooting for pitchers who were pitching against the Mets because it helped my fantasy team. Isn't that essentially knocking away from the pure love of the game anyway, Kostya?
I agree. I think that the fantasy sports has changed. I play in a league too, but I play in an American League only league because I don't want to root against the Mets. Exactly that. But I don't think it is as severe as it would be if it was legalized gambling.
Senator, what about the risk to the integrity of the game on the field? I mean, Pete Rose bet legally on baseball, although it wasn't allowed within Major League Baseball. Tim Donaghy, the NBA
How did
ref,
he bet legally?
No, he bet illegally.
Oh, he didn't go to a casino and place bets?
No.
Okay. But what's to stop a player or a representative of a player or a coach from going to the Meadowlands or going to Monmouth, placing a bet, and then knowing that they can impact the outcome of that game?
And what's to stop them now from putting a bet in Las Vegas, putting a bet in a local bookie, going online, putting a bet in? Nothing. At least we'll be able to regulate it. And by the way, nobody's going to plop down $10,000 cash without us knowing about it. So when we're talking about big bets, moving lines, we'll be able to detect that.
If there's a risk that this proposal in New Jersey could mean no more Super Bowls in New Jersey, or no more.
We lost money on the Super Bowl.
Or no more Final
New Jersey lost money on the Super Bowl.
WWE.
But it did put the state in the
We
spot.
lost money on the Super Bowl. We're talking about thousands of jobs bringing it back. I'll take those jobs over the Super Bowl.
You'd rather have sports betting than the Super Bowl or sports betting than the Final Four?
Not even close.
Kostya, what about the?
And by the way, if we get other sports betting, other states will, if they want it. The only place that the NFL or the NCAA will be able to play their games is in the state of Utah. Think about that.
Because Utah won't get it.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an extreme example, and I guess it could theoretically go to that thing. So you asked about the reluctance of teams to put a game in that thing. You know, as the senator pointed out, the NFL is playing in England, and we have not yet seen a team in Las Vegas, and that's because of the. You don't think of Wembley Stadium, although betting goes on. You don't think of it as a gambling place, right? You think of it as a place where these great football, meaning soccer matches have taken place in all the history. But you do think of Vegas as a gambling place, and that's why there's so little pro sports going on there.
I think the NHL is looking to expand to Las Vegas. We're going to keep this debate going after a break. Up next, questions about the process as it's playing out in New Jersey as the state staked its claim to a long shot. Stay with us.